Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle Me in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. A new book, or I should say a new author, with many books. And series number 112. The book is Edgar Cayce's The Story of Jesus. So what did Edgar Cayce have to say about Jesus? Do you know who Edgar Cayce was? Apparently he's called America's most famous prophet. He found out that he could lay down, pray for a while, put his hand up on his third eye, and he would see eventually a light like a tunnel. And he'd close his eyes and put his hands down by his side and move towards that light, and then he would fall into a trance. And somebody would be sitting in a chair next to him and ask him questions. He never heard himself do a reading, and for the first half of his life, his readings were basically to find cures for people, and usually unusual situations where people would go see the doctor, and the doctor was befuddled, couldn't figure out, diagnose the problem. And it all started by accident when somebody he knew was ill, and somehow he went into the trance and gave the solution, and it just caught on. And then somewhere in the middle of his life, after many years, somebody had the idea to ask him about past lives and readings for people other than solving problems for people's health. So then, after the second half of his life, he did many more readings about many things about people's past lives. So it's quite interesting. I'm a student of Edgar Cayce, I guess most of my life. When I wasn't even a researcher before 2005, I always had an interest in unusual things: Edgar Cayce, physics, anti-gravity, electronics, Robert Heinlein, all his series, A Stranger in a Strange Land. I read every one of those books way back when. And just other books, but Edgar Cayce was always there. And I have several books here I'll show you. That this series 112 will include any and all videos I make in any and all of these books I have. Many Mansions, the Edgar Cayce story. I got some tabs in there. A while back I started reading it. Edgar Cayce on Atlantis. Edgar Cayce, Encyclopedia of Healing. This ought to be a handy book. If somebody were to sit down and read it and understand it and find out some of the cures that he came up with for particular ailments. Here's a little pamphlet I acquired years ago. Edgar Cayce Auras. How do you see auras? Some people see auras naturally. Looks like I have a little chart in here. I read this book a long time ago. What I do, because I can't see auras, I take a pendulum and I'll hold the chart on or lay it on a table, and I'll ask the pendulum to show me the color of my aura right now. And it's given me that color right between, put my thing on the paper here, right between the blue and the green. You're probably wondering, how do you do that? Well, I have a whole lot of books on dowsing. I've studied that for a couple years before I even got into the conspiracy theories, UFO aliens, the Kabbalah, Zionism, and all these other topics I'm into, psychic research, remote viewing. I learned how to use the pendulum. I'll show you a few of those books right now while I'm at it. People have been using wands, sticks in the shape of a V, or pendulums, or L-rods. I'll show you some of that. This is my, you can find books, I'll show you a book with this kind of device on it. But you use it like a pendulum. You say, if you ask it a no question, show me no. See, that's no. Show me a yes, that's yes. So you can, I'd use it sometimes at parties. I'll let people get in line and ask questions from Mr. Pendulum. And if I tell them there's a rule, they can't ask me things like, is their mother going to die, or is their husband cheating on them? I make them ask just fun things that I feel safe answering. Who knows if it's all true? I want to understand the stuff that's going on, so I practice what I consider a harmless thing, divining, using L-rods or pendulums. Edgar Cayce, The Essential. Unquestionably the best general introduction to the teaching of this phenomenal American seer, healer, and spiritual philosopher, Jacob Needleman, and there's much more. So, then I have a big thick book. Edgar Cayce on dreams, Edgar Cayce on healing, Edgar Cayce on diet and health, Edgar Cayce on ESP, extrasensory perception. So that should be an exciting book to read. So let me show you some of my dowsing books. I mean, we are talking about Edgar Cayce going into trances and doing readings, accessing, so he says, the Akashic records. Some kind of records out there in space. Some kind of library with no walls and no ceiling. That if you go see the light and travel there, there's a librarian there. And you can ask questions about just about anything. Alright, here's one called The Divining Heart, Dowsing and Spiritual Unfoldment. Like I said, I was researching this stuff before I got into the conspiracy theory, which we shouldn't call conspiracy theory anymore. The plans for a new age and a new world order. And apparently the utter destruction of Christianity and other religions, who apparently this new age says promote hate. If you say you can't commit adultery or pansexualism or steal and murder and all that, pedophilia, well, you're a hater. So it's being said. Not mincing any words here, just saying like it is. Information dowsing using the pendulum. So you read these books, and I spent a couple years. Earth energies. Looks like this could be a video about dowsing instead of Edgar Cayce, but that's not the case. Effects of harmful radiation and noxious rays. You can see the little stick there. Map dowsing. When you do map dowsing, let's say somebody's lost in the national forest. There are forest rangers, if you want to look into it. There are books about this. Well, here's one. But they'll give the pendulum operator, this is the pendulum, and just like my other tool, give me a yes, goes that way. Give me a no, goes this way. I can ask it like where somebody is. if I have a piece of their clothing or a comb with their hair or something. Psychic abilities. So they just, the man is thinking about something, holding his hand over the map and just waving it back and forth slowly across the map. And the pendulum will start gyrating when he comes to where whatever it is he's seeking is. And some people have a natural ability, some people have to practice, and some people just can't get it because I believe they just don't believe. Pendulum possession. And I think some of this has, here's a little chart you can use to, like I said, you can ask it for no's and yes, or positive and negative, no and yes. You can have a nice little cardboard chart or paper chart on your desk and ask the pendulum questions, and it will respond. And when I show people how to do it, and it does respond, because they always say I'm faking it, I'm doing it, but when I put it in their hand and it does work, a lot of people freak out. Here's another one, what I call the L rods, swing rods. And I just happen to have a pair of those here. So when I ask them to show me a yes, they cross. Show me a no, they cross. And I know you think I'm doing it. Here's one that's interesting. I'll hold both of them in one hand. Show me a yes, 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 show me a no, show me a no. One hand. Show me a no, and they close together. But when you're walking across the field, if you're looking for water, you're imagining an underground stream. Is there an underground stream under me? Is there an underground stream under me? And you walk along, and when you actually pass over one, they'll cross really quick, and as you keep on walking, they'll unfold really quick, depending on how wide the stream is. And then you put a stake in the ground and move on down about 10 feet, and again cross the area, and it'll cross, and put a stake in the ground, and you'll actually see the path on the ground where the stream is underneath. So if you drill a well, you have some property, and you want to hit some water, it pays to hire a dowser, because the well driller will be happy to drill your well, the hole for your well, and maybe $2,000 to $5,000. And if you do not strike water, he's going to say, well, that's just too bad. Where would you like me to drill the next hole? For another $2,000 to $5,000. So you could spend all month there, and this guy could rack up quite a bill. But if he was a good well driller, he would say, you know, I might recommend Rick. He might be able to help you out. Then when I come back here, there'll be the pegs in the ground where he discovered different underground streams. Another thing I studied for years, I have a stack of these about this high. These little pamphlets. They come by the month. A quarter, I should say. Spring. These are all spring. But nice little dowsing month quarterly reports, talking about finding even noxious energies where your bed might be, which might make you sick or something. Geobiological dowsing in the U.S. and Europe. So if you have one of these underground streams or something going across your bed, one of these waves, you could wind up with tumors and cancers. And go see a doctor till you're blue in the face. You're not going to get cured until you move the bed. Studying dowsing, it was fascinating. I did this for years. Then somehow I got on all this other crazy stuff. Alfred Watkins, The Old Straight Track. Apparently a lot of those monuments all over Europe and elsewhere all over the world are built on these ley lines, energy lines that crisscross the planet. And that's where they built all those round church steeples, buildings all over Ireland and England, and things like Stonehenge and big churches. They were building all those on sacred spots, the intersection of those energy lines you just saw in this book. The Divining Mind. So many books. The Guide to Dowsing and Self-Awareness. Here's a famous author, Abby Mermet, Principles and Practices of Radiothesia. What's interesting here, I'll give you a sample, because remember we're going to be reading from Edgar Cayce, and I suspect I'll be making a lot of videos. So it might behoove us to get a little clue to what I'm talking about. Edgar Cayce uses a different psychic ability other than using the pendulum or the L-rods, etc. Abby Mermet was a famous priest who would find water, lost people, and other things. And one story goes with these priest using the pendulum to track some thieves. Some people were murdered in Europe, and their money was taken, and they were found, their dead bodies, and nobody knew anything. And the priest said, well, let me give it a chance. Throw that. I think I need some water. The priest said, let me see if I can do it. And he asked the pendulum to give him a direction where the culprits went, the murderers and thieves. And it took him down this path, and this way, and that way. And finally to this little vacant old cottage, so it seemed. And the people went in there, and there were the two thieves with the stolen money. But anyways, it was a very big issue back then. But apparently, somewhere right after that, the Catholic Church said dowsing was an evil sin and forbade it. So think about it. You could find criminals, and I've got books on that. I've gone over stuff like that, using dowsing. It's basically using your higher consciousness, connecting to the higher world, which knows everything, like the Akashic records. But I'll give you one more nice little sample here that's kind of fascinating, seeing that I am into engineering, physics, electronics. You take a crystal, that's just a crystal, and you can take the L-rod over it, around it, and every single piece of material on Earth emanates a ray from itself. Everything is connected somehow. So if you put it around the thing, and when you find the ray, it'll give you, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, it changes directions and gives you a code. It'll go 10 circles, 14 circles, 10 circles, 14 circles for this particular object. Think about that. You could be blind and not have your eyes open. Here's another crystal. Obviously, different kind of material. Forget the name of this one. I've got a book. But anyways, you put your thing around it, and the ray around every piece of object is in a different place, by the way. It's almost like some kind of geometry thing, because all things are made up of matrices and lattice. And so just showing you a little bit of stuff. So you take your pendulum around it really closely, and there I found the beam emanating from it on the other side, and it's given me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. So this is 5 and 10. So the pendulum will spin around on that beam 5 times, 10 times, 5 times, every time. Different materials. water, whatever. Anyways, Abbé Merlot was kind of famous for inventing that or showing that in his books on how the pendulums change their vibrational rate and their rotation. This is real, I call. It is a science, but to me it's a spiritual science. And we have been talking about the occult. Let's see if there's any more charts here. Here's one in Abbé Merlot's book. We talked about finding radiation in your bedroom. Let's say you have cancer or an ailment, or your eyes or your feet. Where would the detrimental line be crossing in your room? And if you did have an ailment, wouldn't it be nice to know this stuff? So here it shows you right here, the corner of the room and the intersection of the energy lines. No radiation in the room, as you can see this room, but the radiation would be on the corner here. Now, believe it or not, like in China and other places around the world, you can't build a house until you have a dowser come by, survey the property, and make sure you're not in the intersection of two major lines. And I moved into a new condominium in Florida once, and I looked across from my condo, across the street, and there were these trees that were twisted. I mean, it was obviously, it wasn't going like a straight twig. It was twisted all around like it was a malignant cancer, and it had fist-sized knots all over it like cancer. And I said to myself, man, two of those intersecting energy lines that crisscross the planet are right there by that tree, and that's what causes it to be cancerous and malignant. And I went over there with my rods here, and I walked around the tree, and I could see there was an incoming energy line and an outgoing, and then another one intersected the other way. And I said to myself, man, I looked next to the condo, 5 feet over was the wall of the condo. I said to myself, I would not want to live in that condo. Anyways, after moving in, I got to meet the lady who lived there, and she said that she had brain surgery, and she had a big hole in the top of her forehead, and they took out a piece of her brain, and everybody said she was acting really crazy, like a wacko, and nobody knew why. And I'm looking at those crisscrossing of the energy lines. Well, anyways, that kind of stuff is in these books, too. So this stuff is serious stuff. Here's another one, Society for Psychical Research. This would be July 1897. And it has a section on here, How the Rod is Held, 266. And Appendix A, 259, The Works and Dows and Dowser by my right finger there. Dows and Dowser. And so if we look at page, you'll see. The so-called divining rod. And here they're looking for something. It says so-called divining rod. There's a river. It's somebody's property. So I think you get the point. And I have, if I'm looking down here at my bookcase, I have this many books. One more we'll look at. Famous book, The Divining Hand, by Christopher Bird. If you go on used book sites, you probably can find some dowsing books. It would behoove you to get into this. I even have a website called webdowser.com. And here in this book, you got this lady dowsing inside her house. And interestingly enough, so there's all kinds of these tools. But basically, you're using your psychic power. So I'd like to spend another year or so, go back to this stuff. It's been so many years. And they did it in ancient times. Just randomly flipping over this book. They used it to find gold or copper or stuff in the ground. See where they put the stakes in the ground? Just looking for some more pictures. You can see here where they're digging for gold or something. And there's a dowser in the middle of this picture. The military uses dowsing, believe it or not. Like in Vietnam, you can make your own dowsing rod out of a coat hanger. About 4 to 14 inches. Marines on Operations Divine for tunnels in Vietnam. So as you can see, I'm quite the thorough researcher on issues. And I have all these books on dowsing. I spent a couple years going through those before I got into some of this other cult. I got books here. Forbidden Archaeology, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Freemasonic Holy Bible, the Encyclopedia of the Occult, one of the Judaica encyclopedias. I have the whole set in front of me here. I'm going to make some more videos on the Judaica encyclopedia. Maybe the next topic will be on Zionism. It's a fascinating amount of material in there. Dungeon, Fire, and Sword, John Robinson. Born in Blood, John Robinson. Studying about the Crusades and the Freemasons and the Knights Templars. Occult Theology. A new encyclopedia of Freemasonry. So anyways, that's my opening, and I thought it would be prudent to do that before I start reading this, to put the whole conversation into context. Why can we use a pendulum and get answers to the divine? And everybody's a little different. We're all psychic, by the way, to some degree. Sometimes you think about somebody, and the next moment the phone will ring, or you'll be looking at somebody's back, and they'll feel the eyes burning on them, and they'll turn around. Try it sometimes if you want to. Just pick some person randomly in a food court in a mall, and just look at them for a minute. It'll only take a second or two, and they're going to turn around and look right at you. Something to this. Even Edgar Cayce on the auras. And what does it mean that my aura was right there between the blue and the green that I just mentioned it? Obviously, to me, that is a healthy aura. I would hate for my aura to be over in the yellow or the red. But right there between the blue-green, and it does have a little chart in this book to tell you about that. Let's just see what it says. Blue has always been the color of the spirit, the symbol of contemplation, prayer, and heaven. And there's more here. I'll let you read if you want to read it. And put your computer on pause. And then so it was right in the middle of blue and green. Pure emerald green, particularly if it has a dash of blue, is a color for healing. It is helpful, strong, and friendly. I'm not making this up. So when I just did this to myself, asked it what my mind, I'm just asking in my mind, what is the color of my aura? I just take this chart. You can go online and print out any kind of these charts. And it's putting me right smack dab between the blue and the green. Now, if I was not healthy, it could be dabbling over here in the orange and yellow or red. I'm going to dwell into those conversations in the future videos. So let's get to the book. Now that I've taken you off into la-la land and you're going, wow, Rick, that's some crazy stuff. This ought to be interesting. The man who went into a trance, and when I was reading this book, it explains a little bit how he did it. But let me read. Edgar Cayce's Story of Jesus, America's Sleeping Prophet, offers his unique interpretation of the greatest story ever told. That would be the story of Jesus, the Bible. Whether you want to believe it or not. And FYI, 2013, 12 is more of a good number. The 12 apostles and stuff like that. Dozen eggs. The 12 constellations. But 113 will be the next video, I believe. And it'll be on this book. Another book about Jesus, ironically, but not very nice. Jesus Christ in the Talmud, Midrash, and Zohar. And as you see, I've already been reading it. All the stuff I want to go over has already been read in the last few days. Designations and the origins of Jesus. And this is some researcher back in let's see what it says here. There we go. 1893. So somebody went through some of the Hebrew Jewish books, some of their, what some people might call nasty books, not so good. Books that say bad things about non-Jews. They call Gentiles. Not kidding you. So this guy back in 1893 went and researched those books that probably most of us couldn't even comprehend in Hebrew and all that. But I've been reading it, and it's been blowing me away about what they say about Christianity and Jesus. It's not too good. So that will be 113 in my series. And 13 is kind of an ominous number. It's so apropos that I'm doing this one on number 12. The story of Jesus, where it says good things about Jesus. And then this book next where it says terrible things about Jesus. And this is 113 and this is 112. It just worked out that way. But it did dawn on me that was the case. And 13, of course, is the number of witches in a coven. Friday the 13th. And the new astrological sign, orifice, the symbol for the snake. So there's really not 12 horoscope signs. There's 13. If you go look on your computer. Why did they keep the 13th sign secret? Why I have a book I've been going over, the 13th tribe. Anyways, 112 will be about Edgar Cayce and Jesus. 113, I'll make a video about this and show you what it says in some of the secret Jewish books about Jesus. And if you're a Christian, you may not like it. But remember, most 50% plus or minus, I'm not sure the percentage, But Jewish people have no idea about this stuff, do not adhere to this stuff. But some people are into the witchcraft type occult, Kabbalah, sorcery. And I showed you how the pendulum work, or my divining rod. I can walk across a field and ask it to show me if I'm walking over water, and then it'll do something like this when I am, and it'll go back straight when I pass over the water. And again, I put a stake in the ground, move down 10 feet, do it again, and before I'm over, I'll have all these stakes in the ground, and you can clearly see, it's like a river. You can see on the surface the path of the stakes I pound into the ground. So what is it to this magic? And I call it witchcraft and sorcery. I call it magic that elites use on this planet, apparently serving the devil or serving evil, which again, we'll be discussing that in Edgar Cayce's book. So here we go. Sorry it takes so long to get started, but maybe it'll make a little sense when I'm reading. Okay, I'm just passing over stuff. Says here, what is a reading? It is rather hard to describe something which has become so much a part of me. Almost like trying to describe what my face looks like. I can show you, but I can't tell you. I might tell you some of my experiences and thoughts concerning the readings that he did. But as to what a reading is, I can only tell you what others have said about them and what has come to me as I have studied the effects created in the minds of those receiving readings. It would not be an exaggeration to say that I have been in the unconscious state during which the readings are given, perhaps 10,000 times in the last 31 years. Yet, I myself have never heard a single reading. So how can I describe it to you? So whenever he goes in a trance, there's somebody sitting there, an assistant, and that person will ask the questions and record the information. The first step in giving a reading is this. I loosen my clothes, my shoelaces, my necktie, my shirt cuffs, and my belt in order to have a perfectly free-flowing circulation. Then I lie down on the couch in my office. If the reading is to be a physical one, I lie with my head to the south and my feet to the north. If the reading, life reading, is just the opposite, so he does physical readings for people's health and life readings for people's past experiences and about their life. So life reading is just the opposite. My feet are to the south and my head is to the north. The reason for this difference in polarization, as the readings themselves call it, I do not know. Once lying comfortably, I put both hands up on my forehead, on the spot where observers have told me that the third eye is located. Right here. Where your pineal gland is. And here we go again. I always venture off to the left or right here. But when they put fluoride in the water, your pineal gland gets calcified. It should be full of water and little crystals. It gets calcified, just like a pipe. You see all that calcification build up. But fluoride in the water calcifies the pineal gland, and it inhibits, it disables your psychic ability. And it's intentional that the powers that be, run the world that's run by the Illuminati, Freemasonic, occult types that we're talking about here, Kabbalistic people, I believe they know that. They put fluoride in the water of the German prisoners to make them lethargic. Apparently they learned it from Russia. So somebody wants to disable our psychic abilities. FYI. Alright, so once he's lying comfortably, he puts his hand over his third eye and prays. Interestingly enough, I have unconsciously and instinctively, from the very beginning, adopted the practices used by initiates in meditations. I've been doing videos on initiation and this other stuff, and I'll continue to do that. So now we see a little glimpse in what we're talking about when I talk about magic, witchcraft, sorcery. And as far as shamans go, healing doctors, I'm not so anti all of that per se, but I do object when the elites ruling our world are using these magical techniques and other witchcraft type powers to dominate and control the rest of us. That's when I object. And that's what they're doing. The symbolism we see everywhere, it's all geometry. And it is dangerous for the rest of us. Got a glare here. Alright, moving on. So he unconsciously, instinctively knew how to do it, but if you go to one of these places where they teach people the occult and join something like the Rosicrucians, Illuminati, who knows what they learn in Freemasonic lodges, meditation, yoga, and all this other occult secret societies that swear under threat of death, having their throat cut, not to divulge the secrets. So he instinctively knew how to do it. This instinctive putting my hands up to the point midway between my two eyes in the forehead is a case of what I mean. Then I wait a few minutes until I receive what might be called the go signal. A flash of brilliant white light, coming sometimes tending toward the golden in color. This light is to me the sign that I have made contact. When I do not see it, I know I cannot give a reading. After seeing the light, I move my two hands down to my solar plexus, and they tell me my breathing now becomes very deep. If you ever lying next to somebody, and when they go to sleep, you can tell when they go to sleep, they all of a sudden start breathing, and you know they're out like a light. And it becomes rhythmic from the diaphragm. This goes on for several minutes. When my eyes begin to flutter, closed up now till they have been open, the conductor, the one sitting in the chair with him while he's going into a trance, knows I am ready to receive and suggestions which he proceeds to give me slowly and distinctly. If it is in the physical reading, for example, the name of the individual to receive the reading is given to me. So if somebody needs some health advice, together with the address where he will be located during this period of time. So a lot of his readings were done when the ill or sick person wasn't in the room, or maybe in the town, or in the state, or maybe not even on the continent. These powers to the Akashic records span everywhere. There is a pause, sometimes so long a pause, he says they tell me, that it seems I haven't heard the directions, so they give them to me again. After which I repeat the name and address very slowly until the body is located. So now he's in a trance. They said Joe Smith at 10 Walnut Street, New York City. And then in a trance, Edgar Cayce will go, Joe Smith, 10 Walnut Street, New York City, Joe Smith, until he locates him. He's commanding his soul to locate this person. Or whatever. Until the body is located of that individual and a description of its condition is begun. So he found the person, and then he just starts to describe the medical condition. What is going on with that person? This then is how I give a reading. I am entirely unconscious throughout the whole procedure. When I wake up, I feel as if I had slept a little bit too long. and frequently I feel slightly hungry. Just hungry enough for a cracker and a glass of milk. As to the validity of the information that comes through me when I am asleep, this naturally is the question that occurs to everyone. Just like me using a pendulum right here, does it really work? It's like I got a sunbeam shooting at me here. So what about it? Is what he's reading true or not? Apparently the cures for the ailments of people worked, and it fascinated medical doctors. So I guess we can say wherever he was getting the information from was true and correct. And again, not to be spoiling this book review, but if people are into evil, contacting evil sources for information, or ways to control other people, or kill other people, and get other people's wealth, or take over a kingdom, or whatever, that not so nice people might be involved in, like the New Age and New World Order people, the Zionists who want to rule the world from Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, you might have a problem here if you're not aware of this kind of technology, spiritual technology, let's call it. So, of course, the validity has been objectively proved many hundreds of times by the results that have come from applying the advice. So that's why he became famous. His cures that he obtained in a trance worked. And I believe I've gone over in past videos on the things like that with Carlos Castaneda, A Separate Reality. I made a video on that you can look up. And I've talked about and shown pictures from the Peruvian shamans when they take the ashkawushka, haushka, however you say it, drug, and go into a trance to find cures for the tribe or solve problems for the tribe, talking to energies or beings from the other world. Well, while I'm at it, let's look at the pictures again. So one professor from some university in the North America was down there investigating the shamans in Peru. He found one shaman who had a ability to draw, was a good artist, but he would draw pictures of what he saw when he was in a trance at the other side. Sorry about this sun glare. Keep working hard to get this thing right. So what is it they see on the other side? All right, continuing on here. With regard to the source of information, I have some ideas. Naturally, but even though I have been doing this work for 31 years, I know very little about it. Whatever I could say would be largely a matter of conjecture. I can make no claims whatsoever to great knowledge. So he's not a seriously educated man. I too am only groping. So he can do these readings, he can go into a trance, but he doesn't know why or how it works. But then we all learn by experiences. We come to have faith or understanding by taking one step at a time. We don't all have the experiences of getting religion all at once. Like a man who got halfway between the bottom of a well or to the top when he was blown out by an explosion of dynamite. We all have to have our experiences and arrive at conclusions by weighing the evidence with something that responds from deep within our inner selves. And that is why I read books and do book reviews. So that people can watch them, ponder, and try to come up with their own conclusions about what the heck is going on in our reality. Anyways, as you can see, I've made some changes to my background in my office. I picked up that Mayan calendar cloth in my many trips down to Mexico, Cozumel, Cancun, and it's one of the tourist things you buy. Back in 2012, how appropriate was that? Supposedly the end of the world, as per the Mayan calendar. Alright, reading on. As a matter of fact, there would seem to be not only one but several sources of information that I tap when I'm in this sleeping condition. So it makes me wonder, what source of information am I tapping to when I do this? And I make up a chart and I ask questions in my mind, and I find out that this is my 7th reincarnation. I'm not asking anybody to believe me. I may not believe me. But I ask questions, and 3 of those incarnations were before the Great Flood, for my personal reading to myself, asking questions and getting answers. And this is my 4th reincarnation after the flood. And before Jesus was born, I had 2 incarnations. And after Jesus was born, I had 1 incarnation besides this one, so that would be 2. And the first one was around the year 600, and apparently, according to the information when I asked questions with the pendulum, I was in Egypt, and I was a Christian 600 AD. And before the Great Flood, I was in Atlantis, according to my questions and answers, which I'm not trying to say we should believe, just saying something I investigated, and those were the answers I got. But I was in Atlantis on the 3rd period of the 10,000 years when Atlantis was sinking. It didn't sink in, it sunk in 10,000 years. Some number, got to remember. But I was, so I think it was 1,000 years. And I was in the latter 3rd period when I was born and died an older man. So I was still living in Atlantis while it was breaking up. My point is it broke up over a long period of time. To look at my notes to get the right number. And then my other 2 incarnations, one was in Egypt and one was in Saudi Arabia before the Great Flood. So I'd like to find somebody who's more skilled at this, like a psychic, and maybe they could verify my weak attempt at trying to get these answers. I seem to be able to find water and to check the quality of water and do certain things. And I have learned that when people investigate psychic abilities, some people grow slowly and get better skilled at it, like that, go on the curve going up. Some people start out and all of a sudden, up, they just jump up and go up. And some people can practice for their whole life and not get there. Some people, a lot of psychics, famous people, have like fallen out of a tree or had someone hit them in the head with a rock. Somehow it altered the pineal gland or the blood flow, and they became instantaneous psychics, had abilities. And of course, a lot of the psychics, like Nikola Tesla and many others, they grew up in families that prayed a lot. And for some reason that opened up the 3rd eye, and they were psychics as children. And I found this to be about 75% of the case of all the famous scientists and artists of the past. They had psychic abilities when they were young, and apparently their fathers were into, their mothers were into some kind of serious religion. Just fascinating stuff. And I've been getting this common denominator over and over and over and over. And I've been mentioning it in my videos. So where does the information come from? Why are some people more psychic than others, and why do some people like me practice for 10 years? And I can see that it seems to getting a little better, but I have heard that at some point for some people, it just jumps up, I guess, when you get through that door. Which reminds me, I was having a question whether I should read this book, Astrodynamics, Robert Bruce. I just got this in the mail, big thick book. I have many books on these subjects. But apparently a guide on how to do what Edgar Cayce did, to be able to go into the a trance, or go and leave your body and go to the light and see that other world. But once you go there, apparently there's no turning back. So I've never been trying to study this stuff other than to find out what the heck is going on planet Earth, what's behind this new age, new world order, all this satanic symbolism everywhere. These people who want to be the aristocrats and enslave people on the planet, and stuff that we read in the Bible, the videos I've made on series number 72. And I will be making more videos on the biblical books of the New Testament. So back to this book. Alright, back to the book. I hope all the sidebars I've been doing help put this stuff into perspective. One source is, apparently, where he gets the information when he's in a trance. Apparently, the record of an individual or entity makes in all its experiences through what we call time. So apparently, everything we do in the waking state and sleeping state, the way I understand it, our dreams, it's all recorded. The sum total of experiences of that soul is written, so to speak, in the subconsciousness of that individual, as well as in what is known as the Akashic records. Anyone may read these records if he can attune himself properly. So wouldn't it be nice if you could use that kind of ability to get the winning lottery tickets? But apparently, harm can come to people who use these powers in the wrong ways for selfish purposes. So it doesn't work as well as some people would like. And some people with certain kinds of satanic abilities or magic maybe can make this kind of psychic ability work to their favor, to the detriment and danger and harm of others. Apparently, I am one of the few, Edgar Cayce says, who can lie aside their own personalities sufficiently to allow their souls to make this attunement to this universal source of knowledge. But I say this without any desire to brag about it. In fact, I do not claim to possess anything that other individuals do not inherently possess. So I'm saying we're all spiritual beings in these biological bodies. And if they weren't putting fluoride in the water and other types of chemicals in our food and everything else, and even the air with the sky spraying, who knows what kind of people we would be. But that would not work to the benefit of the elites who control our planet. They don't want the competition, and they want to keep their elite status. And God knows what kind of creatures they are. Gray aliens, reptilian beings, Anunnaki. What? Do they have a different DNA? Some people think that the information coming through me is given by some departed personality who wants to communicate with them in some benevolent spirit or physician from the other side. This may sometimes be the case, though in general I am not a medium. So he's saying here he's not a psychic. He can't go down to the corner store when he was alive and get a psychic reading. He was in a trance and didn't even know what was going on. In that sense of the term. However, if a person comes seeking that kind of contact information, I believe he receives it. So we're just reading the preface here. I don't know how far I'm going to get in this book. But maybe I'll just read a little more of the preface and start getting into some readings and having some conversations. Remember, this is the story of Jesus. So we're getting a little background. As a child, I prayed that I might be able to do something for the other fellow, to aid others in understanding themselves. So I think his father was a minister, and as a child he prayed he could help other people, and especially to aid children in their ills. I had a vision one day which convinced me that my prayer had been heard and would be answered. So I'm going to stop there and start doing some readings. And I'll come back on my second video and read some more of the preface. I am in no hurry to finish any book of videos I'm making, even when I do this one about Jesus and the Jewish books, the Talmud, the Midrash, etc., the Zohar. So these videos that I've made, and I got part 1, I will be getting to part 2. I just let it flow and let the year go by. And whatever intuitive thing comes to my head, the next one I feel that's important, that pertains to what I want to try to show, it seems to come to me. And I think that's part of the key in the lives of all of us, is like maybe we do need to slow down and start paying attention to the reactions to our actions. And maybe life would be better. But now, of course, in the news, there's lots of talk of World War III and Civil War II in the United States, and other chaos and anarchy possibly looming. H1 virus, is apparently the flu virus, as some are saying, is reaching dangerous levels over in Russia or Europe. And the stock market is reaching all-time high with the optimism with President Donald Trump in office, only a short period of time. And global warming, they're still pushing that really hard. And Planet X, Nibiru, terror threats. Apparently Russia and Putin being a threat to the world. China being a threat. Building defense on the U.S.-Mexico border. Sustainability, biodiversity. So much more stuff. So it just might behoove the rest of us to just try to wake up and know who's behind the scenes in the biblical prophecies that are said to be coming, according to the Bible and many other people, books, Nostradamus, microchipping people that are already doing it. This stuff is making legislation. I've been watching the news. And Congress right now, half of it, the Democratic side, and leaders all over the world are saying we need the New World Order. And I'm not convinced that's what God or Jesus would want, and I can certainly see how it wouldn't be good for us. Once they get everybody under lock and key, we will not be living the good life that we live. The ones of us that are living the good life, all of a sudden, for reasons of rationing or this or that, they'll be continuing their little program, and they will be lying to us and eventually enslave all of us non-aristocrats, elites, into the secret societies and other particular selected peoples, so they think they are, of the world. So why don't I get into some readings and see if any of this makes sense and is connected. And I think anyone will be able to see that it is connected. The things that are going on, and the things even here with Jesus and the other world, the spiritual reality, which is where we're all from originally. And when we die as a human being, our soul will return to it to some degree. There are different firmaments or heavens and dimensions, however you want to try to interpret it. But apparently good people will go to one place and bad people will go to another. And apparently in the world, bad people get punished, karma. And apparently the people who are working to convince everybody in the United States and the world to be part of the New Age and pedophilia, pansexualism, transgenderism, etc. These people who are promoting that propaganda understand karma. So if they wanted to destroy a people, let's say it's cast out angels, evil demons, want to destroy us, and they could convince us to do evil, knowing that karma would follow. How many of us would fall for it and believe in being greedy and selfish and materialistic and approving of sexual abuse of children and trafficking of human beings and enslavement of others and stealing and so much more, harming others, poisoning, toxins, vaccines, GMOs, sky spraying, microwave transmitters. So they're creating this evil world, and apparently some kind of karma will follow. Whereas the spiritual teachers should be telling the people the truth, that if you treat each other how you want to be treated, which is what Jesus taught, then karma will follow, and you will have this Garden of Eden reality. This makes one wonder. Okay, starting on page 23, from the readings. Here we go. When did Jesus become aware that he would be the Savior of the world? Remember, I've just shown you a little bit about the use of the pendulum, even the military using it to find caves in Vietnam, and how the effects are. You can tell certain codes from minerals, and all this stuff. And this stuff I read the pre-Edgar Cayce material. So what would Edgar Cayce, going into a trance, have to say about Jesus? And should we all pay attention? And then after you watch this video, when I do this one, and Jesus in the Hebrew books saying not so nice things, and I'm being generous there, says very horrible things. So watch this video, and then when I make the next one, watch that, and use your God-given brain, and you decide what's right and what's wrong. So, when did Jesus become aware that he would be the Savior of the world? When he fell in Eden. That would be the Garden of Eden. This is Edgar Cayce, and not necessarily that I'm trying to teach this. We're going over a book, investigating what the heck is going on in reality. What did this author, this famous psychic, who was curing people of ills for a good portion of his life, and then got into life readings, have to say? So he said Jesus came in the world when he fell in Eden. So then you scratch your head. When he fell in Eden, the only two people back then would have been Adam and Eve. So is he saying that Jesus originally, like my reincarnation story, and others, you can get books on this stuff. I have books right here I can show you on reincarnation. Many of them. I will be reading them and going over them, the stories, including out-of-body experiences, remote viewing. Does that mean that Jesus had been Adam? That's the question. The answer: study the book which tells of him, Jesus, born of the Virgin Mary. Then know this is the sole entity, Joshua, who reasoned with those who returned from captivity in those days when Nehemiah, Uzzah, Zerubbabel were factors in the attempts to reestablish the worship of God, and that as Joshua, the scribe, translated the rest of the books written up at that time. Then realize also that it is the same entity who, as Joshua, as the mouthpiece of Moses, who gave the law, and was the same sole entity who was born in Bethlehem. So what are we saying here? Jesus was reincarnated numerous times? The sole entity, according to Edgar Cayce. And again, for all of the Christians out there, which I am a Christian, I'm not trying to teach this as any kind of theology or religion. I'm reviewing what Edgar Cayce has to say. And I listen to everything, including what these people have to say, the Hebrews, about Jesus. And what the Encyclopedia Judaica, the video I made, had to say about Jesus, which wasn't too nice. A recent video I just made. The same soul entity who in those periods of the strength and yet of the weakness of Jacob, in his love for Rachel, was their firstborn Joseph, as Zend, father of Zoroaster, that would be the religion over there that's popular in Iran. This is the same entity, and this entity was the one who had manifested to Father Abraham as the prince, as Melchizedek, the priest of Salem, whose father and without mother, without days or years, but a living human being in flesh. God to prepare an escape for man, as was warned by the same entity as Enoch. So I got another book I'm going to be going over, the book of Enoch. All this is going to tie together. Or, as in those days, as Sapha, or Apha, in those periods when those of the Egyptian land were given those counsels to the many nations, when there would be those saved from the physical, from their own making or doing in the physical, or as the first begotten of the Father, who came as Amulus in the Atlantean lands. So this entity, this soul being who was Jesus Christ, how many times and when was the first time he had incarnated as a human being? And was he sent by God to teach? Apparently here it says that could be the case. And allowed himself to be led in the ways of selfishness. And this was also the entity Adam, and this was the spirit of light. So it did occur to me, am I reading some kind of teachings, little disclaimer here, that could be type of the secret doctrine of Helena Blavatsky, or the Theosophist Society, the Kabbalah teachings. You know, it does make one have a curious mindset. Is this good stuff or bad stuff? This entity that's working through Edgar Cayce. And I did use a pendulum again, trying to check and see when people have positive characteristics to their soul. Show me my characteristic, my will. Goes over to the right. And show me the will of a certain president I'm thinking right now. And it goes over to the left, which is a negative will. And it's not President Donald Trump. It's somebody not too in the far distant past. So you can tell the will, their propensity. In other words, a person will work really hard, but do they work really hard to do good things in life, or do they work really hard to get whatever they can and do evil things in life? So anyways, when I did that on Edgar Cayce, I said what his will goes off to the right, which is a positive will, which is my will, goes off to the right, which is positive. So apparently Edgar Cayce was trying to do the right thing, a good man. But then when I check the gut, or this deep soul of my person, it turns to the right, which is a normal. And the wider it turns, the better soul you have, and the smaller it turns to the right, the lesser good you are, but you're still good. And if it goes counterclockwise, you can be a bad person, a petty thief, or you can be a real evil person, like might be involved in 911. Things I studied. But my point is, on some people, when I check the gut, it doesn't go in a complete circle, bad or good. It gyrates into a figure 8. And I've discovered that means that somebody is possessed or has another soul entity operating through their body. And again, getting back to recent people, presidents, or Edgar Cayce, he's a good man, but he seems to have some other soul entity operating through his body. And I noticed that one president and his father with the same name, one had an evil gut, had one soul. The other one was possessed. And when you saw this particular president speaking on TV, he seemed possessed. His face always looked a little different when he did different speeches. I used to notice that back then. Remember, I've been studying this stuff intensely since 2005. In the first couple of years, I was only trying to find alternate solutions for gas, oil, and nuclear power, and holistic healing and stuff like that. I wanted to check the old ancient books because I felt that the scientists and the universities and the elites running our world were concealing something from the rest of us. So it was only years later I got into the deeper stuff, the secret societies and assassination of Kennedy, and UFOs and aliens. What's all that about? So now let's get back to Jesus and Edgar Cayce. So these readings came from the sleeping Edgar Cayce between 1932 and 1944, the second half of his life doing readings. It should be remembered that prior to 1923, Cayce spent over 20 years giving clairvoyant readings for hundreds of physically afflicted persons, with no mention at any time during that period of any such items as biblical history, metaphysics, religious philosophy, and especially the subject of reincarnation. I'm only reading my highlighted portions here. At the same time and subsequently, Cayce was a devout Christian, a Sunday school teacher who had no background whatever in the metaphysical and religious philosophy beyond his own fundamentalist beliefs. When Edgar Cayce was a young boy, as it'll say here, he read the Bible from front to back once a year. How many young people would do that? So I think that had something to do with opening up his body to channeling some other entity. And his motive, his ambition was to help people. Consequently, the comments which came through the life readings on such subjects as Akashic records, so there's some kind of records out there in another dimension or somewhere, where everything is recorded about everybody, every single thing you and I do. So you might want to think twice about some of the things you've done and what you might do. It's all being recorded. Those people with the microchips that plan on microchipping we the people all over the planet and enslaving us have nothing on the Akashic records. Planetary sojourners traveling on the planets, past incarnations, and their related karmic implications. So he did readings on these on the last part. Were decidedly alien to the awakened Cayce's manner of thinking. So the first half of his life, Edgar Cayce, for the first 20 years, was completely oblivious to this life reading stuff. He was just doing health readings. Nevertheless, their life readings were pursued from 1923 onward and comprised a major portion of the material in the Cayce files. Any study of the 2,500 life readings or the metaphysical readings associated with them provides the reader with numerous references to biblical history and the individual who wrote it and lived it. Now, what are we going to believe? What are we going to believe when I keep reading and it says here and tells stories about Jesus? What are we to believe? Moving on. Cayce would, in one breath, as it were, rattle off different quotes from the Old and New Testaments, sometimes paraphrasing them, sometimes interpreting, then mention persons well known in the Holy Book, alongside others whose names and relationship are lost in history, other than as contacted or revealed through Cayce's unconscious mind. So when he went over the Bible, he would mention things that happened that were not documented or recorded, but later on would be verified. Consider some of the statements concerning the Essenes, a certain cult of Christians, these offshoots of Orthodox Jewry, Jewish people, who were responsible for recording the Dead Sea Scrolls. Just so happens, I'll be going over that. Got my work cut out for me. And remember, my videos are targeted just towards regular people having a regular conversation, because that's what I am. So when it's not above anybody's head, I read it, talk about it, and after you watch enough videos, and just not mine, other people's videos, maybe you can come to some conclusions on your own. So it says here, ye say that there were those periods when for 400 years little or nothing had happened in the experience of man as a revelation from the Father or God. So when we talk about the Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, we're directing the conversation toward God. Yes? Or from the sources of light. And as the Kabbalah and other teachings teach, apparently people or whatever were all just sparks from this emanating light. And we get born and then we recede back into that light, according to the Kabbalist. And it just makes me wonder why a lot of these people, like the Zionist, Illuminati, and other secret society types, including witchcraft and ancient Mayans and all these people who are practicing sacrificing people and trying to enslave and murder people, just makes me wonder what kind of spark is emanating from God's world to produce these people. And if any of these people are watching my video, yes, I'm talking about you. Y'all know what you're doing when you're doing these child trafficking and hoarding all the resources and wealth of the world and putting fluoride in the water and creating genetically modified foods to poison and make people ill, and mercury and other toxins and vaccines, and just generally making the planet anything but the paradise it could be and should be. I get a little enthusiastic about these conversations sometimes, which I think we all should. William Cooper, Bill Cooper, Beware of a Pale Horse. If you haven't seen his videos on YouTube, look up Bill Cooper. But he said if you're not willing to die for something, you're not living. In the Bible it says God understands, or something about the people who want to do good, and he understands the selfish ones who want to do bad. But nobody understands lukewarm people, people who are just apathetic, who think that ignorance is bliss. They don't care if they're murdering all the Arabs in the Middle East or whatever. Just leave me alone. That's not being alive, in my opinion. So we all need to wake up and try to figure this out if we want to try to stop what seems to be planned, World War III, or a revolution in the United States. Two sides of the coin right now. You can clearly see it in Congress, and all this rhetoric about how they hate President Donald Trump. And if Hillary would have won, all the Republicans and conservatives who have already suffered 8 years of craziness from President Obama, not to be outdone by the previous 8 years of President George Bush Jr., then Clinton, and then his father, George Bush Sr. We've been getting some really crazy presidents, but apparently, when I'm doing my research, none of this is anything that's new. The elites have been controlling our world all along. If you've been watching my videos, which you can find a list of my videos on my website, rickmiracle.com. On the top left-hand corner, it says list of videos on YouTube. Copy and paste, make yourself a cheat sheet, and you can go through them from UFO, aliens, conspiracy theories, remote viewings, Zionism, the Bible, and just kind of randomly go through these different topics to give yourself a well-rounded education, and also look up other people's videos on these topics. Planet X, Nibiru, terrorism, 911. It's quite a bit. But anyways, so for 400 years there wasn't a lot of interaction between humans and apparently God in the sources of light. What was it then that made the setting for the place and for the entering into that of consciousness in the earth that ye know as the Son of Man, the Jesus of Nazareth, and the Christ on the cross? Did the darkness bring the light? Did the wandering away from the thought of such, the light, bring the Christ into the earth? Why did they send Jesus here from the other world, God's world? God's world, God. To teach, treat each other how you want to be treated. Is that a bad teaching? According to that other book, the Hebrews did not like it at all. Rather, it is this idea, not a refutation of the common law, that is present in spirit, mind, and body, like that begets like. There we go. Like begets like. Bad begets bad. Evil begets evil. Good begets good. So when they're trying to push this New Age paradigm, evil behavior, transgenderism, pansexualism, sex with anything, and selfishness, and the evil stuff we see on TV, onto our society, and people embrace it and put skull and bone tattoos on their bodies and daggers and looking like Pokemon. Many people, if you go down to your inner cities, the little Pokemon chip with those little monsters on them. I mention it to friends of mine quite regularly, and they go, "Yeah, Rick, you're right. A lot of people do look like Pokemon now." It is what it is when you start looking around and paying attention. You can't make this stuff up. So what is it that brought Jesus to the world to bring light to the world? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Can anything good come out of Jesus' being born and then the Hebrews rejecting him and having him crucified? Isn't it rather that there were those that ye hear little or nothing of in thy studies, the Essenes, who dedicated their lives, their minds, their bodies to a purpose, to a seeking for that which had been to them a promise of old? Were not these individuals, men and women, who dedicated their bodies that they might be channels through which such influences, such a body might come? So I guess there were these religious sects that prayed and lived very pious, very humble, and wanted their bodies to be channels for these entities to come through from this other world to help we the people on planet Earth. Some of this stuff I'm paraphrasing just to make it clear what I'm reading and what I'm thinking. Then there were diverse groups, as well as the Essenes, who had set themselves as a channel through which there was expected to be, in that particular period, the fulfillment of those promises indicated from the first promise to Eve into the last, as had been recorded by Malachi. There were individuals who in their activities of daily life were in keeping with neither of the first indicated groups. So can people try to communicate with these other dimensional beings from God's world, or maybe the world where the 1/3 of angels were cast out of heaven? Apparently there was some kind of rebellion in this other spiritual world, heaven, So I always say, just because you can communicate or you hear voices or you see visions, you have to be careful who you're communicating with. You don't know if they're good or they're evil. I guess if you pay attention to what they want, you can tell if they're good or evil. Moving on. Because of the divisions that had arisen among people into sects as the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and their divisions, there had arisen the Essenes. So way back then in Jesus' time, there were different religious sects of people. Some adhering to the teachings of God, of Moses, almost 2,000 years earlier, and some people rejecting Moses' teachings, the Ten Commandments, and decidingly to follow an evil path, who not merely had cherished the conditions that had come as word of mouth, but had kept the records of the periods when individuals had been visited with the supernatural. People were visited by the supernatural or out of the ordinary experiences. So even back then, people were having out-of-body experiences, whether in dreams, visions, voices, and whatnot. So none of this is new. That's important to think about. Might help us understand, and I think I can connect the dots between the reptilians and gray aliens and stuff in the Bible. Apparently these sons of God found the women fair, started mating with humans, and produced offshoots that were pygmies and giants and literally monsters, apparently having sex with horses and other animals, creating the mythological figures many of us have seen when we were in school, half horse, half man, and all this. So apparently there's a serious, ugly side to disobeying God's commandments and what was designed to be our reality having been altered by evil people for selfish purposes. Mount Carmel was the original place where the school of the prophets. So prophets are mentioned in the Bible. Prophets are mentioned throughout history and all religions. People who were communicating with the other side. Where do I get the information? When I use the pendulum and I ask questions and ask it to give me yes or no answers. And sometimes I leave my mind blank and certain answers, just thoughts, appear. And you have to be careful. Even says in the Bible, Jesus said, you have to watch your thoughts. And the Lord's Prayer, if you know it, it says in there, lead me not into temptation and deliver me from evil. So there are influences, spiritual entities, could be right in this room, who would try to influence me and tempt me. But when we think we know a bad thought when we get it. And we have to ask ourselves, wait a minute, is that my thought? Is that what kind of person I am? And if the answer is no, then you know why the Lord's Prayer says, lead me not into temptation and deliver me from evil. If you are caught up in evil, if you're one of these evil people, you can pray to God and get away from the evil. Seek and ye shall find, ask and ye shall receive. These are biblical sayings. So, if you are somebody who has a particular ailment or sinful problem that you're into, whatever it might be, and you want to get away from that, you can pray to God to help you with that problem. You can change your life. We all can choose the path to being a decent person, or the path seeking to, like on some of the TV shows, sleep with every girl in town. Comes to mind 2.5 Men, Charlie, or Seinfeld. I think these teachings are intentional. And the people who own Hollywood want to take all the non-aristocrats, those people, secret society, Zionist people, to the dark, bad path, because they know what karma does. They don't want to have TV shows where people do good things and good things happen. Heck, that might just get out of hand and everybody will start being good. And the world will blossom into some paradise. They don't want that. They want to keep their control over the world. And how much of effect does the spiritual world have on this world? I believe quite a bit. And how much do we people pay attention? And I'm not trying to be a religious teacher here, but, when Edgar Cayce is talking about Jesus, I'll throw my 2 cents in there. Back to the book. I have to catch myself. I start going off here. I apologize. But I've studied a lot, and that's what I think. And I'm not always right about everything. I'm learning as I go. And these were students of what you would call, so they had these, Mount Carmel was the original place where the school of the prophets were established by Elijah, Elisha, and Samuel. So they did schools for prophets. Now get this. And these were students of what you would call astrology, numerology, phrenology, and those phrases, and the study of the return of individuals and reincarnation. So incantations, magic, witchcraft, sorcery, the Kabbalah. These are ancient teachings. And they burned the Library of Alexandria, by the way, over there, I think, in Greece. The Catholic Church did. Because throughout history, the people who are in control of our reality have been trying to erase this knowledge of these kinds of, I guess, beyond science, unnatural science, or beyond natural science, psychic abilities. The elites of the world don't want you to know those things exist. Cause and effect in karma. And I'm only reading my highlighted portions here. There were then 12 maidens in the temple, of the order of the temple, and this entity was one of the 12. So he's telling this one person he's doing a reading that there was a order where there were 12 maidens, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, was one of those maidens, by the way. And they lived a very humble, pious, strict religious life. And they were preparing the way that some spiritual entity could come through one of them to be the savior or the teacher of the world. And apparently one lady here who had a reading, she was told that she was one of those 12 maidens, but she wasn't Mary, and she wasn't chosen, and she didn't give birth to the Messiah, Jesus. So they had religious orders back then about that stuff. So you can imagine me when I'm reading this book, and I'm reading these paragraphs. If you're a little amazed or astonished or whatever, think it's interesting, imagine I felt the same way when I was reading this in the last week or so, when I pre-read the stuff before I make these videos. So moving on here, Mary reached the top step. Then there was the thunder and lightning. So Mary is one of these maidens who were preparing to possibly receive the spirit of the divine world to help improve this world. And she reached the top step, and there was thunder and lightning. So he's giving this lady a reading, telling her what happened. And the angel led the way, taking the child by the hand before the altar. So this lady who he was giving a reading to witnessed this, and Edgar Cayce's talking about this. This was the manner of choice. This was the showing of the way. For she led the others in this particular day. At this time Mary was between the age of 13 and 14. The conception of Jesus came at the age of 16. And back then that was normal for 16-year-old women to give birth. And the question here is from the person discussing with Cayce while he's in a trance laying there. Cayce's not aware of what's going on. Is the teaching of the Roman Catholic Church correct in that Mary was without original sin from the moment of her conception in the womb of Annie? Answer from Edgar Cayce in a trance. It would be correct in any case. Correct more in this. For as the material teaching for the just referred to, you see, in the beginning, Mary was the twin soul of the Master in the entrance into the earth. So some of this theology stuff in here is a little confusing. That Mary, the mother of Jesus, was a twin soul of the Master Jesus when he arrived. They were both divine beings, a twin soul. Was Anne also prepared for her part as the mother of Mary? Edgar Cayce says, only in general, not as specific as Mary, after Mary's being pointed out. See, there was no belief in the fact that Annie proclaimed that the child was without father. It's like many proclaiming today that the Master was immaculately conceived. They say impossible. They say it isn't in compliance with the natural law. So a lot of people don't believe that Mary could have given birth to Jesus without a physical father. It is a natural law, as has been indicated by the projection of mind into matter, and thus making it of itself a separation to become encased in same, as did man. So in the beginning, when God made man, it's the old story, what came first, the chicken or the egg? There was no women when God first created man. He said some words, and with the word he created man from the dust and dirt of the earth. So if God could do that when he first created man and everything else, why couldn't he put a spiritual divine soul in Mary to be born? To me, it's a useless argument. You know, I'm not trying to go that deep into religion. I'm going to say that I believe that Jesus was not your average soul, and I do accept Jesus as the sent Savior, and apparently, if it says in the Bible, the Son of God. I'm not going to argue with it, because what he taught was to treat others how you want to be treated. So, to me, that's what's important. What did he want us all to be like? To love one another? But for that, the Hebrews were very upset with Jesus, as we shall see. Question, then neither Mary nor Jesus had a human father. Edgar Cayce says, neither Mary nor Jesus had a human father. They were one soul so far as the earth is concerned. So again, we get some perplexing things to think about. Question, did Mary's conception of Jesus take place in the temple at Jerusalem or in the Essenes at Mount Carmel? Answer, Edgar Cayce, the Essenes, to be sure, because of the adherence to the visions as proclaimed by Zacharias in the Orthodox temple. He, Zacharias, was slain even with his hands upon the horns of the altar. Hence these who were being protected, Mary and Elizabeth, were in Carmel while Zacharias was in the temple of Jerusalem. And Elizabeth was the mother of Saint John the Baptist, who came before Jesus, who was baptizing people in water to be clean before God, something like that. Again, I'm not a really serious religious scholar. I'm searching for what the heck is going on planet Earth. You know, why was everybody back in 2001 and 3 and 4 losing their homes and the artificially created economic destruction I discovered. I just wanted to find out what the heck's going on. And it was at that particular point in my life that I wanted to fulfill some of the dreams I had, writing books, and still researching anti-gravity devices. I've got some interesting new material on anti-gravity devices in some of the books I've been ordering lately. Again, reading some of the stuff from some very interesting people, you do pick up little bits. How those UFO craft operate. Apparently, they can take these stone-like things. Let's see, a stone-like thing, and charge it up with hundreds of volts. And if you place it under, I'm going to use my mouse here, under a craft, it levitates up. Playing with my computer mouse. But apparently you get these things they make, they're round and they look like rock. But if you put a voltmeter to them, they're hundreds of volts, and they defy gravity, and you put them under a craft, and the craft can zoom away. Just talking about some of my other crazy research I do. Videos I'm going to make. Alright. Was Zacharias, father of John the Baptist, an Essene? As has been indicated, Zacharias at first was a member of what you would term the Orthodox Jewish priesthood. Mary and Elizabeth were members of the Essenes, you see, and for this reason Zacharias kept Elizabeth in the mountains and in the hills. Yet when there was the announcing of the birth of Jesus, and Zacharias proclaimed his belief, the murder and death took place. So when Zacharias said he believed that Jesus was his birth and that he was the Messiah, apparently the bad people back then, the Pharisees, the people from the temple of Jerusalem, slew him, killed him. Question: is it difficult to grasp the concept of reality, of the Immaculate Conception? Could you please clarify? Answer: neither is there much indicated in sacred or profane history as to the preparation of the mother for that channel through which Immaculate Conception might take place. And this, the Immaculate Conception, is a stumbling stone to many worldly wise. So a lot of people just don't want to believe that God in his infinite power, or the angelic world, or the soul world, I don't know everything, I'm theorizing. A lot of people just don't want to believe that that could happen, so they refuse to believe. All I'm saying is Edgar Cayce in his trances, this is what he taught. What are we to believe? And what about the videos I made on the Bible? And many other books I've gone over, and many books I'm going to go over. Maybe we'll get a little closer to the truth. As the Spirit was made manifest in the body, purified by consecration, for purpose in the lives manifested in the earth, so might the Spirit. So as the Spirit was made manifest in the body, as a spirit was put in the baby's body that was born, maybe it was put into the baby's body while the baby was still in the mother's womb, purified by the consecration of purpose in the lives manifested in the earth, so might the Spirit, being to the organs of its own flesh, a body through which the Spirit may itself manifest in the earth as its twin soul. And as I said, when I did my pendulum on certain people, when I was learning how to use it, trying to detect people's wills, and I've got books on this, I'll go over it, but like my will is off towards the right, and if I ask the will in my mind of a certain president, it's evil off towards the left, and then of course we all have a will in our mind, and then we have a soul, or what I call the gut, And I ask about that like myself, and it's a positive turning thing. Not outwardly super positive, like I'm some great person, but not real small, like I'm not anybody. And if I ask the will of a certain evil person I know, I'm not going to say who he is, but his first name is Dick. He was involved in 911, and it's a seriously negative left-hand turn. Then I'm going to pick another president, and I see that it's not giving me left or right, it's gyrating. And I discovered that means that the person was possessed by another entity. So I guess in Edgar Cayce's case, he was possessed by another entity, because when I checked his gut out, that's what it did. So it didn't give me an answer to a single soul, good or bad. It gave me this little gyration, which I couldn't figure out for quite a while. So I guess you can be possessed or in communication with a good spiritual entity or a bad spiritual entity. FYI. What I'm thinking. We're moving on here. Remember those forms which have been given. First he was created, brought into being from all that there was in the earth, as Adam, an encasement for the soul of the entity, a part of the Creator. So was Adam, when he made Adam God, did Adam have some of the Creator's spiritual soul in him? Were we all part of the Creator? Knowing separation in death. Then he was made manifest in birth through the union of channels growing out of that. Thought of the Creator made manifest, but so expressed and so manifested as an Enoch. And I'll be going over the book of Enoch. I've been reading it. Fascinating. As to merit the escaping of the physical death, which had been the result of the law of disobedience. So apparently there are laws of disobedience, and that's why I'm saying with this new age and these TV shows and teachings and convincing everybody that they can be progressive, liberal. You can do whatever you want, like the evil Aleister Crowley taught. But I think there's a consequence to that. And if people wanted to destroy us, let's say Zionist Israel wanted to destroy the United States, and they understood the laws of karma, the laws of the universe, and they could get everybody here in the United States, generally speaking, to be evil, and then of course the Christians who want to remain focused on family values and not killing and not stealing, and not transgenderism, changing our sex, and other seemingly abnormalities in humanity's world right now. Is that a nice way to put it? But if we all go towards the dark side, is there a karmatic effect? And apparently, according to this teaching, there is. There is cause and effect. And if somebody wanted to destroy us, and they wanted to lead us all astray, like in the Lord's Prayer, it says, "Lead me not into temptation, and deliver me from evil," that means we would have to stop these people who control Hollywood and all the propaganda, lead me not into temptation, and deliver me from evil, and have these evil people leave the United States and stop inflicting the evil upon us. I just think it's weird how those sentences are in the Lord's Prayer. So I say the Lord's Prayer and I go over it and it just amazes me. Our Father who art in heaven. Okay, I'm reading this book. Our Father who art in heaven. It says it right here. The Creator. Hallowed be thy name. Okay, he's the God. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So at the end of this game, when we have Armageddon or whatever happens, God will win and earth will be like heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. This is the Lord's Prayer. So we pray. We want the Lord. What do we all need every day? We need to drink water and eat food. Other than that, if we had a nice place to sleep and things to do, we can live as long as we can eat. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us of our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. I know it's hard. I've had a lot of people do bad things to me, and I can harbor some resentment and some anger, maybe even some vengeance. But no, no, no. The Lord's Prayer says, forgive me of my trespasses as I forgive those who trespass against me. So if we all want to be forgiven when we do leave this planet, or in our karma now, we have to forgive other people when they do bad things to us, so we think, annoy us, hurt us. Your best friend might run off with your wife. Somebody might steal your money. Forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Because we all do things that are wrong and we all need forgiven. So again, a universal law of karma. And then another one, the next sentence in the Lord's Prayer, lead us not into temptation and deliver us from evil. Those are not in the Lord's Prayer by accident, so I am concluding. We are all tempted, even with the dreams. I told my girlfriend the other day, you're not going to believe this dream. And in the dream, I rejected the proposal that was evil. Something was wanting me to do something. And I said no, and I was fighting it, tossing and turning in my sleep. All right, back to this video. My dreaming states. I've been having some dreams, and it occurred to me that if there is this other world, and when we continue reading the Edgar Cayce book, it does say, and it did say, that to communicate with this other world, whether it's a drug or a trance state or a dream state, when you go into that state of sleep where you start breathing heavy and it's like you pass out. But it did occur to me that we can be attacked in our dreams. And that's another whole topic. But I thought I'd just look at a couple books. The Dream Dictionary. Whether you have sweet dreams or nightmares, that's what it says. You can learn how to decode the messages you're receiving while sleeping. Using the hundreds of precise definitions. Inside, it's easy to resolve problems, learn about yourself and others, make changes, and even predict your future. So as you can see, I've got a lot more to go on these videos. The mystery of dreams. I get dry mouth and scratchy throat when I keep talking. The mystery of dreams. Let's see. Telepathic dreams. So can we communicate with other people in the other world in our dreams? It seems so. If I told you some of my dreams. I think I mentioned them in the past. But I am a researcher, and I do read a lot of these books. And I am out there as a truth seeker, sharing some things that are probably detrimental to my own spiritual health. The evil forces probably don't want people to know the things that I teach. Obviously, the elites of the planet and whatever else is going on don't want we, the people, to know about why they're dumping chemicals in the sky, putting toxins in the foods, taking over most of the industrials and natural resources, propaganda about sustainability, biodiversity, and planning for this new age, new world order. What is going on? Here's another book I have. So like I said, I've got a lot of books here. A lot of things to do for 2017. So we were talking about spiritually religious speaking. A lot of people reject the possibility that Mary could have been impregnated through the spiritual realm. Which, if you think about the reality that we're spiritual beings in these biological bodies, it's not so far-fetched. And even in Hitler's diary, a video I made on the To Eliminate the Opate by Rabbi Marvin Anthelman, he quoted in his book that in Hitler, in Munich, Germany, they abducted, kidnapped a young gypsy man, sacrificed him on an altar to bring forth this spiritual being, which apparently appeared, according to Hitler's diary, with a young lady laying on the altar of the cult. And the purpose was to impregnate her with this spiritual being, to create this super race or bring into this world some evil demon. I don't know. I just research and report. But it does seem to come together. The further I dig, the more I find and connect the dots. Everything is connected. A little more from this book, Edgar Cayce, The Story of Jesus. And I'll stop this video. It's about the 2-hour mark. And we're going to continue. I'll make more videos and get more deeper into the readings instead of all this preparatory work. But, you know, you sort of have to have the preparatory work before you start to get a grasp of what it means with this occultic world and what kind of forces are giving me the answers and why will it tell me certain things but not tell me something. Sometimes when I ask questions, you're supposed to ask according to the dowsing books and all the other books I've read on spirituality. You're supposed to ask the higher power for permission. And even Jesus taught you have to test the spirits. Just because entities communicate with you doesn't mean they're good entities. So here you're reading the Bible and Jesus says you have to test the spirits, and here I am using a pendulum trying to check the quality of the water or my past lives, just experimenting. But you have to be careful. You have to pray in Jesus' name for protection. There have been cases of people being abducted, playing with Ouija boards, winding up an ambulance would have to come to the school and take away several girls who had gone mad playing with the Ouija board. And Jesus in the Bible cast out a lot of demons and evil spirits out of people. So you got to be careful when you're playing with this stuff. And again, where are we getting the information? Where did Cayce get the information? And apparently he was incommunicado with some kind of master or being. Just lots of questions. And I'm not trying to preach or teach. I'm sharing this information. I appreciate in the comment section below if you got any thoughts on the subject and or additional information to add. You know, we're in this together. We want to find out the truth. I don't think we need a new world order, which apparently so many people are buying into, protesting in the streets. They're being deceived. And when I read that other book from the Jesus in the Talmud and the Zohar and the other Hebrew Jewish religious books, and you'll find out that these people who are planning on this new age and new world order, who control the secret societies, they hate us. They hate Jesus. So that's why I'm reading this first. So let's just read a little more. Maybe at this point I'll just jump ahead and try to find some readings. Or I only have 2 more pages, so I'll finish this particular chapter. Here we come again to the mention of the Master, having previously existed and manifested as both Enoch and Melchizedek, all of which gives John in Genesis in the Bible 14-18 and John 8-56-58 a decided ring of truth regarding both Edgar Cayce and the thread of this discourse. So there's biblical passages that support the stuff that Cayce's been saying. Judy, an individual who is unmentioned elsewhere in the pages of history, and the fact that Cayce himself died in 1945, 2 years before the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, he predicted they would be. So Edgar Cayce predicted the Dead Sea Scrolls would be discovered. A couple of years before they were discovered. And he mentioned this lady, Judy, that would be involved. And when they were discovered, there was this character, Judy. Just FYI. I've got a lot to read here. I'm only up to page 30. So anyways, my highlighted notes here. Literally hundreds of separate readings for different individuals given over a period of 2 decades. Yet the story is amazingly consistent and interrelated throughout. I'm not reading everything, just highlighted portions. In this case, is quite a bit. I'm not trying to do an audio book. I'm having my commentaries here. You can go find Edgar Cayce books at used book sites or new bookstores. And if you're interested, it says here, consider then the hundreds of people that Cayce gave life readings for, along with their almost invariable interrelationships during various past lives with others who also had life readings. In later readings, Cayce would often add to the story or the relationship, but he never veered from his original statements regarding, say, the inter-involvement of several members of a family throughout previous periods where 2 or more had incarnated at the same time. Apparently this incarnation thing is quite fascinating, and I have books on it. But a lot of people that we're closely associated with in our life now are people we actually lived with and interacted with in past lives. Again, I'm not trying to preach this as any kind of theology, religion. I'm a Christian. I'm just discussing what I've been learning. So in one life, a past soul could have been your mother. In the next life, the same soul could be reincarnated and wind up being your daughter. And friends and other people. And so some people in your life might not be reincarnated souls that you knew, and some people are. So it's just interesting to try to figure out who's who. Cayce to have fabricated all of these by reason of an active imagination or some other unknown source defies all logic. You saw all those books, 20, 30 years, not making any mistakes. They even tested him numerous times. They gave him the name and address of a fake person, and Cayce went into his trance, and he's having a query. He's going, I can't find this person. I can't find this person. The person never existed. How's that for trying to trick him? Certainly from somewhere he was picking up rather detailed personal information, neatly threading it together and reciting it forth, mostly without hesitation. As fast as the stenographer could take it down in shorthand. So he was just spitting the stuff out pretty quick without hesitation, and never wrong as far as health readings and other things that were discovered about his readings later on. So we have one more page here. Let's see if I can zip through it. Cayce never in all those years gave a reading, physical or otherwise, for a person that didn't exist. A common ploy by investigators is to submit a fictitious name and a set of facts to the psychic such as Cayce, to a psychic. So they didn't just do it to Cayce. This was apparently attempted on various occasions, at which time Cayce would announce that he could not find or locate such a person. That's what I just said. Told you I pre-read all this. 2, he would often be given a name years after an initial reading, then after stating, yes, we have had this body before, and go into a lengthy discourse as if there had been no break in time whatsoever. So somebody would come back years later for another reading, and he says, yes, we've had this body before. But consider again the initial paragraphs regarding the master and the effect they must have had upon the awakened Cayce. Here was the traditional Christian trained in fundamentalist Sunday school teacher stating not only that reincarnation was a fact, but also that Adam and Jesus were one and the same individual. So they were one and the same soul, not the physical body. And to make matters more complicated, this same beloved Jesus was being referred to as Enoch. We're going to go over the book of Enoch. The scribe who some believed wrote the first books of the Bible, as Joshua, who later translated and brought those books up to date. So all these famous people, Cayce's saying, were reincarnations of this soul that was Jesus. Okay. As Joseph, the son of Jacob, sold his brothers into captivity in Egypt. As Joshua, the companion of Moses, who finally brought the children of Israel back to Jerusalem. As Melchizedek, priest of Salem, who feasted centuries before with Father Abraham, giving rise apparently to the statements of Jesus. Even before Abraham was I am. And Abraham knew my day and was glad thereof. I guess that's in the Bible. Then too we have the Emulus, referred to as the first begotten of the Father, coming to the Atlantean. Here Cayce's talking about Atlantis. Land. Shades of lost continents and unknown, unrecorded names and relationships tied in with well-known names from the Old Testament. Surely the sincere and devout Cayce must have tumbled fully inside upon hearing these accounts, and then prayed long and hard concerning the source. Interesting? All right, the last paragraph, page 32. Like I said, we're going to come back to this book and the other Cayce books. I don't know how many videos or how long it'll take. I might be doing this for another year before I get to numerous Cayce videos. But you can go online and find them. Or consider the statements that he, as a Protestant Christian layman, made concerning the virgin birth and the Roman Catholic claims in tracing their origins back to the temple on Mount Carmel. A fascinating side note is that by an odd quirk of fate, the Roman Catholic Church in Virginia Beach is located directly across the street from the old Cayce home and former ARE headquarters. It is named for Mary, Stella Maris, the Star of the Sea. In Palestine, the Carmelite monastery on Mount Carmel is also named Stella Maris. Isn't that weird? Where Cayce lived and where the headquarters are for the Edgar Cayce Research Society is across the street from a church, Stella Maris, and back then on Mount Carmel, where Mary was at, where she was spiritually impregnated, was named Stella Maris. These coincidences don't stop there. And again, my purpose for making the videos, reading all these books, dedicating now 12 years, going on 13 of my life, to finding out what the heck is going on, because I sensed back then, years ago, on one of those big zero birthdays, when I went down to Costa Rica, and people told me that things weren't what I thought they were, and they felt sorry for we Americans. I was bent on going to find out what the heck they were talking about, and I discovered sky spraying and all these conspiracy theories and remote viewing and psychic research and so much more. And then a plan to enslave the planet. They schemed with World War I and World War II and the other wars to get the Palestinians' land over there in now called Israel. They schemed to cause 9/11 and so much more, all these fake terror threats. They're trying to destroy Christianity and discredit Jesus. So I thought I'd read about it and talk about it. Who are these culprits, these evil entities? Finally, there is the unmistakable fact that according to the readings from Genesis to Revelation, the entity Edgar Cayce was repeatedly intertwined in the lives and purposes of the Master. So even Edgar Cayce was reincarnated and intertwined with the lives of the Master and his associates throughout numerous incarnations, from Atlantis to the present New Age or the Aquarian Age, however we come to phrase it. So you've heard the song, The Age of Aquarius. We're here in the midst of a paradigm shift. And apparently the people who, according to the Bible, who believe in Jesus, will be able to, so you speak, beam me up, Scotty, will be able to escape this looming, coming new paradigm where apparently some evil aristocrats will rule the planet like the Hunger Games movie, and the people will be either killed or enslaved. And you're going, when I read that other book on the Jesus in the Talmud and the Zohar and the other Hebrew books, it says that all Christians will be killed. None will be allowed to live. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to read this book and then read that book and read some other books like I've been doing, trying to put this little puzzle together. Thank you for watching my video, Rick Miracle reporting.